Welcome to Fight News Now Extra. I'm John Pollock. We've got John Randine and Robin Black coming up as we'll discuss the latest involving Anderson Silva and his response to his positive drug test. What is the status of Silva for Tough Brazil? And we have a new main event for Brazil in March. Anderson Silva has released a statement through his manager Ed Suarez addressing Tuesday's news that he had failed a pre-fight drug test with 2 anabolic steroids being found in his system. Silva is adamantly denying that he took any banned substances and will not be speaking on the matter for the time being. We spoke with Ariel Helwani of MMAfighting.com this week about the nature of the test results not coming back in time, and thus Silva went into the cage this past Saturday with PEDs potentially in his system.
If I'm Nick Diaz, I'm pretty pissed off right now. And of course, Nick Diaz has his own issues, but I'm pissed off that I went into a cage with a guy who allegedly took this stuff almost a month before the fight. And that's why I have a big problem when people just kind of throw their hands up in the air and say, this is common practice and, everyone's on it and blah, blah, blah. No, I want to find all these guys, especially in our sport, because you know as well as I do, the moment a tragedy happens in MMA, everyone's going to come out. Everyone's going to come out of the woodwork and they're all going to start burying this sport. And it will happen within seconds. And I don't want to see that happen. I love the sport. I don't want to see anyone get seriously hurt. I don't want to see anyone brain damage or get knocked out when they shouldn't have gotten knocked out. I mean, it's arguably the most dangerous sport out there. It's very disappointing that it didn't come out before the fight. But I do think that it is, on the flip side, maybe I'm trying to be a little too positive, but I do think, okay, we're on the right track here. Now let's just try to figure out how to do this correctly because, Vitor Belfort, the John Jones thing, this thing, their intentions seem to be good. They're just kind of fumbling it at the goal line.
Another big question from this story was how it would affect filming of Tough Brazil, where Anderson Silva is coaching alongside Mauricio Shogun Rua. Filming began this week in Las Vegas, and the UFC has released a statement that he will continue to coach despite the positive drug test. The issue becomes if Silva is formally suspended and whether the Nevada Athletic Commission would give him a corner license, which they would not provide Chael Sonnen back in 2011 for Tough Season 14 when Sonnen was under suspension. Yet another fighter is off the UFC 184 card on February the 28th with lightweight Yency Medeiros injured and Gleison Tibau in to replace him against Tony Ferguson. Tibau just competed at the UFC Fight Night card in Boston on January the 18th where he defeated Norman Park to win his 3rd straight fight, while Ferguson, who won Tough Season 13, has won 4 in a row and 10 of his last 11 fights. And the UFC has removed Uriah Faber from the March 21st Fight Night card in Rio de Janeiro after opponent Rafael Assunção would not be able to fight on that date. The new main event for the card in Brazil will feature welterweights Damian Maia and Ryan LaFlare. It will be 10 months since Maia last competed, where he defeated Alexander Yakovlev last May, while LaFlare is unbeaten since debuting in the UFC with 4 victories. And we have reassembled our panel, Robin Black returning, and me and John have spent a lot of time discussing this topic this week, but I want to get some of your reaction with Anderson Silva, all of the fallout from this story, as that is the primary focus aside from Nick Diaz.
Yeah, I mean, how do we even start here? This is, I hate to say it, but this isn't about Anderson Silva. We can make it about any one individual. We can say, this guy's a witch and that guy's a witch. The problem is that almost everybody who competes in football, baseball, basketball, fighting, and almost every sport are witches. That's the problem. So we can sit around having bizarre conversations about what we did with this guy and why we didn't catch that guy. It's systemic. That's an absolute reality. One of the biggest problems that we have is that there's misinformation in the world because everyone on earth has a podcast, and if people like the tone of your voice, they'll listen to what you have to say. And we're all having nonsensical conversations. The conversation to have is that sport is overrun with steroids. The fact that 70 or 80% of the people using it don't get caught doesn't change that fact. So we can sit around and talk about each one of these individual things or go on witch hunts, but it doesn't make any sense. Sport is overrun with juice.
Is that a case that, it's just going to be an inability for the catchers to be able to find these people? I don't think that should be the conclusion. I think the fact that they have instituted so much out-of-competition testing and look at the results, it's pretty ugly when you pick up the rock and look what's under there. It's a lot of worms.
Bang on. So what do you want to do? Do you want to pick up all the rocks and go, oh my God, there's worms everywhere? Or do you just want to go, we don't pick up the rocks? That's the conversation. That's exactly the conversation. What do we do here? If really there are 60 or 70 or 80% of people people using something, do we pick up every single rock and test every one of them and go, are you guys going to be clean or not? Because if you're not, you can't compete in the sport. Or do we accept another possible reality, which is the whole world? And I'm not crazy. Actually, I'm probably kind of crazy, but I'm not wrong on this topic. I'm 99% more researched on this than 99% of other people on Earth, and I'm telling you the truth. Sport, everybody in sport, almost all of them, it's a part of sport that they're on steroids. So now what do we do about it?
Has this changed? If you are a main event fighter in Nevada now, and you've just watched John Jones get popped out of competition, Anderson Silva, are you thinking twice about this, knowing that if I'm in at least a main event position right now, where out of competition testing is going to continue, are you thinking twice about it now?
Well, it depends. I'm sure a lot of these guys, especially if you have money and you have a big team, a well-connected team, you're going to find doctors that are going to be able to give you things, or people that are in the know that will be able to give you things that you will pass, you will be able to compete, because they don't test for these things. It comes down to science, and it comes down to the motivation of the fighters and their teams, because quite frankly, the best way to get paid is to be the best, and the best way to be the best is to make sure you never lose.
This conversation of honesty, I actually am very proud of the exact conversation we're having. If you don't like it or you don't agree with it, that's totally cool. Give us your opinion. But what you're saying is exactly true. The question isn't, will this help and will that help? The question is, how do we change the motivation from the time you're 12? How do we change the idea of every kid who wants to be the American Idol winner, that you'll do whatever it takes? How do we change the motivation of how we teach children and say, you can be anything you want to be, you just got to do these things? These are fundamental flaws, particularly in North America. It isn't. And I really like your line of thinking. Will we go and if a whole bunch of other fighters go, oh my God, man, we're going to get caught, will that stop some of them? I think the answer has to be yes. Some guys will be like, I'm relieved, because a lot of guys who take steroids do not want to take steroids. They're in rooms of training, and there's many of them, that even just their training partners are so physically strong and recover so well. And we know guys who have told us to our face, I took steroids, I wish I never did it, but I felt I had to do it. That exists. That's the reality. So will this stop some of them, like you said? Or will this, like you said, and which is also very possible, just motivate the people to find even better answers? Doctors, dirty people. This is systemic. This is what's going on.
Final thing, me and John did discuss this, but your thought of, how the outside views mixed martial arts when such a huge figure like Anderson Silva, is this painting mixed martial arts?
Yes, I think it is, and I think it would be if the guy who got caught was an NFL quarterback, or if when the guy got caught in baseball who was a home run machine. It'll happen in all these sports. I think the root of an MMA fighter, they don't have these giant teams, they don't have coaches that have worked with doctors forever, so you might see more of them get caught, but I don't think there's more. Look at NBA players from 15 years ago. Grab any 10 and look at them now. These guys are like WWE dudes. Like, this is part of the problem. This is reality. This is the real conversation. If you really want to talk about this, this is the conversation I think we got to have.
I think most people would say, I'm not surprised these guys kick each other in the head for a living.
All right. Robin Black, John Ramdeen, I'm John Pollock, and more Fight News Now Extra is coming up.